And action.
Nice. Hi, so it's Saturday afternoon. Paul over at Paul Reads Reviews Writes, I think is the name of his channel. Sorry, Paul, if I got that wrong. He suggested a cozy weekend readathon, which I thought sounded like a great idea. We're at home anyway, and so why not have a cozy weekend reading a whole bunch of books? So that's what I've been doing today. I thought it might be fun to do sort of a bit of a vlog this weekend with what I've been reading, and I thought it might also catch you up on some of the other things that have been keeping me entertained during this period of isolation. So I really enjoy doing puzzles, and so I'll show you some pictures of the puzzles that I've been doing. I like to have the TV on and I basically listen to shows while I do puzzles. But I've also been doing a lot of reading, so I'm in the middle of Jacqueline Winspear's Messenger of Truth. And I think it's the 4th in the Maisie Dobbs series. I enjoy the Maisie Dobbs series. I love historical mysteries, but there's something about this book, it just hasn't quite caught my attention. I'm actually a little bit bored reading it, which is why it's taking me so long to get through this book. But I will finish it because I do enjoy the series, and I want to continue on. I've also been reading, let me grab a few of my other books here. Oops. I've been reading A Brief History of Tea by Roy Moxham, and I am just barely started into this, and I just read little bits at a time. I dip in and out of it, but I've been enjoying it. It's very interesting. I love tea, and so reading about the history of it has been very interesting. I'm also reading The Hound of Death by Agatha Christie, which is a short story collection, which includes Witness for the Prosecution, which is the story that I'm on right now. I'm also reading The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society by Marianne Shaffer and Annie Barrows. This is a reread for me. I read this a couple years ago. I love this book. It's an epistolary novel, which means that it's done completely in letters, and I think that that is very hard to do, and this author has nailed it. This is such a good book. Before I read it the first time, I wondered to myself, how much of a story can you really get with just letters? And how much characterization can you have? How much can you get to know a character through just letters? And this book blew me away. It has such a great plot, such a great story, and you really get to know the characters through the letters. I found that so fascinating. And so what I thought that I would do, this is a reread for me, and the movie is currently on Netflix. And so I got this idea from Berna over at Berna's Bookish Adventures. She has a series of book to screen, or pages to screen, I think she calls it, where she talks about the book and compares it to an adaptation. And so I thought I would do that for the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. So look for that video coming up soon. And then if I get through all of those, I'm going to start The Singapore School of Villainy by Shamini Flint. This is the 3rd in the Inspector Singh Investigates. He is a detective in the police department in Singapore, and I really enjoy these books. I find them very interesting. I love learning about a part of the world that I'm not super familiar with, and they're just a really good police procedural detective story, so I really enjoy those. I've also been reading a lot of books, ebooks from the library, so I currently have on the go, I read them on my computer. I'm reading the 3rd, I think it's the 3rd book in the series. It's called Treacherous is the Night by Anna E. Huber, and it's set just after World War I, and they're quite interesting. The main character is a woman whose husband she believed had been killed in the First World War, and she finds out, I think in the first book, that he's not actually dead. And so anyway, they're very interesting. And in this book, she needs to do some investigating, and it involves some of her work with the Secret Service during World War I, which I find fascinating. And so I'm just getting into that book. I'm on chapter 6 in that book. I've also been watching a whole bunch of booktube videos, and I tend to watch those and play a computer game at the same time. I'm completely addicted to Gummy Drop. I've been playing that game incessantly. But I really enjoy puzzles, and so I've also been doing, I found this the last time I was grocery shopping, picture puzzles. It's the kind where you compare pictures and then see what the differences are. I love doing these, and I'm obsessive enough that, so for example, this one here, so you've got the picture on the top, the picture on the bottom, you have to see what's different, and it gives you an average length of time to complete it, and this one was 3 minutes and 39 seconds, so I actually timed myself doing it because I'm a total nerd, and I did it in 1 minute and 18 seconds, so yay for me. I also have a Sudoku on the go, and word search, and this one's awesome because it is a Spotlight Remember When from the 90s, and so yeah, that's awesome. I love the 90s. And then some crossword puzzles too, if I feel like doing crossword puzzles. So yeah, I have got a lot to keep me entertained over this weekend, and I've also been, this is maybe gonna sound a little bit weird, but I pulled out our copy of the Diary of Samuel Pepys. This is of course an abridged version. This one is abridged, edited, and with an introduction by John D. Jump. This one is from 64, and this is based on the Miner's Bright edition of 1875. But anyway, I've pulled it out to look at what he has to say about 1665, which is the year of the Great Plague in England. And it has been very interesting to read what he has to say and to see what are some similarities between then and now and how people behave. I've been finding that so interesting. And I was going to read some from that. Here's one bit. I love this story. Some of his journal entries are extremely short, and some of them are a little bit longer, like this one, that tell this story. So this is August the 3rd, 1665. Mr. Marr told me how a maidservant of Mr. John Wright's, falling sick of the plague, was removed to an outhouse, and a nurse appointed to look to her, who being once absent, the maid got out of the house at the window and ran away. The nurse, coming and knocking and having no answer, believed she was dead, and went and told Mr. Wright so, who and his lady were in great strait what to do to get her buried. At last resolved to go to Brentwood hard by, being in the parish, and there get people to do it. But they would not, so he went home full of trouble, and in the way met the wench walking over the common. I love that they actually use the words wench. That's so awesome. Which frighted him worse than before, and was forced to send people to take her, which he did, and they got one of the pest coaches and put her into it, to carry her to a pest house. And passing in a narrow lane, Sir Anthony Brown, with his brother and some friends in the coach, met this coach with the curtains drawn close, the brother being a young man, and believing there might be some lady in it that would not be seen, and the way being narrow, he thrust his head out of his own into her coach, and to look, and there saw somebody look very ill, and in a sick dress, and stunk mightily, which the coachman also cried out upon, and presently they come up to some people that stood looking after it, and told our gallants that it was a maid of Mr. Wright's carried away sick of the plague, which put the young gentleman into a fright, had almost cost him his life, but is now well again. Which is a hilarious story, right? So this guy sticks his head in a coach because he thinks there's some good-looking chick in it, only to find someone who is sick with the plague, and he's scared for his life. Oh my goodness, it's awesome. And I also found that I had on my Kindle a book written by Daniel Defoe, Earlier today I said Willem Defoe when I was talking to my husband, but no, it's Daniel Defoe, called A Plague Journal, a Journal of the Plague Year, written by a citizen who continued all the while in London, being observations or memorials of the most remarkable occurrences, as well public as private, which happened in London during the last great visitation in 1665, written by a citizen who continued all the while in London, never made public before. So I've just started reading this. I thought that was very interesting. He writes, "We had no such thing as printed newspapers in those days to spread rumors and reports of things, and to improve them by the invention of men, as I have lived to see practiced since. But such things as these were gathered from the letters of merchants and from others who corresponded abroad, and from them was handed about by word of mouth only, so that things did not spread instantly over the whole nation, as they do now." Which I thought was very interesting. So anyway, this is what I'm doing on this Saturday afternoon, and I'll report back in tonight, and we'll see how far I've gotten in my reading and other various activities. Talk to you soon. Bye. Well, it's Saturday evening. It's early in the evening, so I thought I'd pop on and just let you know what my plans are for the rest of this evening. I've been reading in the afternoon. I watched a bunch of booktube. I've spent the past couple nights doing my puzzles and watching Elementary on Prime, and so I thought for tonight I am going to just hunker down and read and watch booktube. I need to catch up. I'm getting a little bit behind on some of my booktube videos. So I've got a cup of tea with me in my J mug. This is awesome. My sister-in-law gave this to me. So it's just peachy tea, and it smells so good. Oh yeah, it's delicious. So yeah, I'm gonna drink some tea and I'm gonna keep reading. I've been reading in my Maisie Dobbs Messenger of Truth, and I still haven't made a huge amount of progress, but I'm gonna keep at it. And I've also read some of my ebook on the computer. I am reading something about a treacherous, hang on. Oh. I will remind myself what it's called. Treacherous is the Night by Anna Lee Huber? Oh. How did that happen? Anyway, so Treacherous is the Night. I've been making some progress there too. I've been kind of going back and forth between the two books, and watching booktube this afternoon. So that was really fun. So tonight I think I'm just going to keep up with that and catch up on some booktube videos and read my books. And if I feel like a change, then I might read from my Agatha Christie and finish Witness for the Prosecution. So yeah, that's my evening. I'll check in with you again later. Okay, bye. So it is Sunday night. It is 10 to 10, and this is the first vlog I filmed today. I forgot, and then I also didn't film any more last night. I told you I would film before I went to bed, and I just totally forgot. Although last night I did not do any more reading. I got sucked into booktube, and I spent the whole evening watching booktube videos instead of reading. But that's okay. I needed to catch up. I was getting a little bit behind, and so I really enjoyed just watching some booktube and seeing what was going on with you guys. And so that was my evening last night. And then today, I spent most of today doing basically the same thing. I alternated between reading and watching booktube. I attended the Easter service at our church through live stream, sitting right here on the sofa, which is such an interesting experience. But yeah, so happy Easter to everybody. I joked with my husband earlier today that we didn't have any chocolate eggs, but I would be willing to hide cherry tomatoes around the house if he wanted to go on an Easter egg hunt. But surprisingly, he didn't want to do that. I don't understand. Anyway, so I did actually finally finish Messenger of Truth by Jacqueline Winspear today. This was a bit of a slog for me, and I'm not sure why. This is the 4th in the series, her Maisie Dobbs series, and it's a historical mystery, which I love. It's set in the 1930s, which I love. And the other books in the series I've quite enjoyed, but this one I found like it was really slow, and I had a really hard time getting into it, and it took me a really long time to read it, and I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe it was just the premise of the story I was just not all that into. I'm not entirely sure. But then by the end of it, it was fine. I mean, I ended up giving it 3.5 stars because it was fine, and there were elements in it that I found interesting. Her assistant Billy, his youngest daughter Lizzie gets sick, and they just think it's the flu or something, but Maisie comes over to help them, and she realizes quite quickly that it's diphtheria, and she gets their daughter to a hospital. And so that part was very interesting, actually learning just a little bit about diphtheria and how it was dealt with in that time period. But in this one, there's an artist called Nick Basington-Hope who is killed. He's setting up for an exhibition of his work at a gallery, and he's on scaffolds, and he's found on the floor with his neck broken. So it appears to just be an accident, but his sister Georgina, who went to school with Maisie, comes to Maisie and asks her just to look into it. She doesn't think the police are taking it all too seriously. And so yeah, it was just all right for me, though. And I'm not entirely sure why. There were some interesting themes in here. There was a lot of talk about truth and whether or not truth should be spoken all the time, or if there are moments when even if you know the truth, maybe you don't need to always state it out loud. And there was other stuff about reputations and how people will take the truth. So I mean, yeah, it was just fine, actually. I'm going to continue with this series, though. I've collected a whole bunch of them, so I'm going to keep reading them. This one was just maybe not my favorite in this series. I've also been reading an ebook from the library called Treacherous is the Night by Annalee Huber. She's written another series that I really enjoyed called, and I forget what the series was called, Lady Grey or something. I'm not entirely sure. That one is set primarily in Scotland, I think, or the north of England. And I just really enjoyed that series. So this new one from Annalee Huber is set just after World War I, and the main character's name is Verity Kent, and during the war she ended up working for the Secret Service, and she spent most of her time in the office, but she did actually go over to France during the war, and so she had an interesting war, but she's not allowed to talk about it, and so that presents interesting problems with family and friends who have maybe comments about her during the war. She believed her husband to have been killed during the war, and that's actually a very interesting part of the series as a whole, because she only married him kind of days before he left to go fight, and so they never really had a normal married life. Anyway, in this book, this is the 3rd in the series, and a friend of hers convinces her to go to see a medium, and Verity does not believe that mediums are real. Well, I mean, the people are real, but she believes that they're all charlatans, and but her friend really wants to see if her brother will come through, and so Verity agrees to go to this seance, hoping that through it she will be able to convince her friend that it's all fake. And in the middle of this seance, or whatever it's called when the medium does their thing, the medium pretends or channels this woman that Verity worked with in the Secret Service over in Belgium. And Verity immediately knows that it's fake because of a number of things. First of all, that woman's not dead. And second, the medium had too much information, stuff that people shouldn't have known. And so Verity is furious, and she wants to go back the next day to confront the medium, only to find that the medium has been killed. And so I'm really enjoying this one. I'm only at 35%, so I'm still basically at the beginning, but Verity is investigating to find out, how did this medium know this information? What was the purpose of it? And apparently she ends up going to Belgium to do some investigating. So I'm really enjoying this one, and I think that it's going to just be really good, and I'm very interested in what it's going to be like once she goes over to Belgium. And there's just this one line just at the part that I'm in now. She's at a ball and the talk of the ball is Wimbledon, where a 19-year-old French athlete, she won the women's singles title, but she wore a sleeveless dress with a skirt so short the hem barely reached her ankles. I love it. It's so awesome. So yeah, so I'm really enjoying Treacherous is the Night. And I also have started the Singapore School of Villainy by Shamini Flint. I'm really enjoying this series. This is the third book in her Inspector Singh Investigates series. And in this one, he stays in Singapore, so that's very interesting. In the first book, he goes to Bali, and in the second, no, that's the second book. The first book, he goes to Malaysia. And in the second book, he goes to Bali, and in this one, he stays in Singapore. So I'm really enjoying these. He's a great detective. He's one of those detectives who are very good at their job, and they have a great clear-up rate, and he understands people, and he's a good investigator, but his life is just a little bit of a mess. Like his relationship with his wife is a little bit fractious, and his boss, he drives his bosses crazy. Like he's actually a little bit reminiscent of Frost, Inspector Frost, if you've read any of those by R.D. Wingfeld. But I really enjoy these, and I love reading a detective series from a different part of the world. I find that very fascinating as well. Like I just read about the part where he was looking forward to breakfast because his wife was going to make some dal for him for breakfast, which is a lentil curry. And so I just, like, right there you see that you are in a different country. I mean, we don't eat dal for breakfast here in Canada. Although it sounds delicious, but I would probably have it for lunch, to be honest. But anyways, I'm just barely getting into this, but quite enjoying it. So I've had a great cozy weekend readathon. Thank you, Paul, from Paul Reads Reviews Writes. I'm not getting his channel name right. I'm gonna link that down below, his video about this idea to do a cozy weekend readathon, because it was really fun. I enjoyed just hunkering down and reading some good books and watching some good booktube. And so yeah, I don't know, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It was a little bit different from me. But yeah, I'll talk to you again soon for another video. Okay, bye.